Debt was out of control, ruined relationships, just being a drunk. And I remember one night I snorted a couple 8 balls of cocaine with another guy. I remember I was in the room by myself, and I put the blanket over my head like I was hiding from somebody, like from God, right? And I was like, something has to give.
Welcome to the free sermon podcast of the Potter's House Church in Virginia Beach, affiliated with Christian Fellowship Ministries. Our vision is winning souls, making disciples, and planting churches. It's Tuesday, where you're going to hear a powerful testimony of God's grace revealed in human lives. Each Tuesday, you'll hear Pastor Adam interviewing pastors from around the world to share the mighty miracles that God has done in their lives to give you hope for yours. We share the stories of the men behind the messages you hear every other day on this podcast. Keep in mind that the free version only includes a portion of the whole testimony interview. To listen to the full version, use the links in the show notes to subscribe via Apple Podcasts or supercast.tech. Every dollar goes to supporting world evangelism. Enjoy today's Testimony Tuesday.
All right, welcome back to the VBPH Sermon Podcast. This is Pastor Adam with you once again, and we are here on this episode of Testimony Tuesday with a very special guest, personal friend of mine, and a great opportunity to have him with us. It's Pastor Adam McFeaters. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for taking the time to join us. You are someone who I know pretty well, and we've had a pretty good relationship over the years. You have been a part of our church here in Virginia Beach, and I know that you have an amazing testimony of what God has done in your life. So I'm excited to share that with the audience today. So thanks for coming on.
Yeah, sure thing. I definitely have good memories of almost about 4 years in Virginia Beach. So that was awesome. A lot of ministry there and a lot of good things.
Well, yeah, we sure miss you guys and your family, but we're also glad to see you stepping into some destiny and pioneering and all that good stuff. But why don't you take the time, first of all, to give yourself the little conference introduction and share with our audience, for those who don't know you, where you're serving and how long you've been there and what's the latest.
Okay, so as of current, I'm down here in Wesley Chapel, Florida, and I got announced last year in March to come down here and begin pioneering. And so we headed out in June. On June 20th, we packed the U-Haul, drove 14 hours, left at like 2 we preached that Sunday night. I preached that Sunday night, left at 2 o'clock in the morning on Monday morning, and got here at about 4 p.m. on that day, on the 20th of June. And we just got here. The property manager came, was witnessing to him in the garage, and he said a sinner's prayer, and the cable guy came to set up the internet because I telework, so I needed to have Wi-Fi right away. He came, same thing, like I'm just hit the ground running. We had a Bible study the first Thursday, so 3 days later we had a Bible study, and we had 2 men and one of the guy's grandson come, and just started doing Bible studies right off the bat. We have had a lot of flyers, like business card type flyers, but it was something to start. It just had a phone number. It was pretty generic, but we got right into pioneering, got settled, and we started actually meeting in this outdoor tiki huts in like the summer, like July and August, like it's like 95 degrees, and it feels much hotter. And I'm out there just covered in sweat doing a song service and preaching under this little tiki hut. You can only imagine. But it was exciting. We didn't go long on those ones, but God always sent families. We had multiple families at every single time we were out there. And then they had a stage there too, but they wouldn't let us use it. And then eventually one day at the exact time I start, some gentleman gets out of a truck and goes into a trailer and blasts some loud secular music. And so I'm like, I can't preach with Bon Jovi singing over my shoulder. So
living on a prayer.
So we moved to the house that day for that service, and then I was like, all right, I've got to find something. So we started in a hotel October 2nd of 2022, and every Sunday morning since then we've been in the Fairfield Inn here in Wesley Chapel, and it's been great. We've seen a lot of people coming through, getting saved. We have a Bible study at our home, a midweek Bible study. So we're doing that. In between, had some really excellent opportunities to go to the sister churches throughout this region and preach like their Sunday night service. They'd invite me to come and do their Sunday night service, and it helped me to fellowship with other pastors in the fellowship and their churches. It was just a tremendous blessing. So I've been doing that, and now we're just we're doing the same thing. We had a guest pastor in January, Pastor Philip Barondret, the assistant in Norfolk, came just for a weekend, Friday night. We did in our home, and we had like 15 people in our home. It was,
praise God, that's awesome.
The acoustics were pretty interesting, and so was the chair setup, but we just made it work. We did what we could, and then we had just recently had Pastor Joe Rice come for a Thursday and Friday night healing crusade. And so Thursday night we saw 5 visitors, 4 people get prayed for healing. Friday night we saw 11 visitors, 9 got prayed for healing, and 2 saved, 2 answered the altar call. And then we concluded it with a Sunday morning healing crusade as well at the church, just to use the same flyer. And we had 6 visitors, 4 saved, and 4 also got prayed for healing. And so one notable testimony was that on, I believe it was Thursday night, the first night, one of the ladies from our church, her name is Miss Mona, and I'm starting to call her Molly Bruno. I don't know if you're familiar with the war room. And there was a lady behind the story, the Molly Bruno. Yeah, so she's our prayer warrior, grandma. And so she went up for prayer. She had a lot of pain in her knees and in her neck, and she got prayed for, and like all the pain left. So Sunday morning I had to give a testimony. And so instead of her taking her walker up to the front, she just walked up to the front and took the microphone and gave a testimony. Wow. And I was like, see what God's doing, and it's been a lot of fun. I've got some good advice to go ahead and have some fun, because after being military for all those years, kind of keeping the upper lip stiff and all that, got to remind myself, smile, have some fun. But we're all happy. We're doing good. Here's Tina and Angela, Abby, Bella, and Rocky are here as well. The kids.
Yes. And for those who are not familiar, where is Wesley Chapel located in Florida?
Wesley Chapel is about 30 minutes north of Tampa. So it's the next suburb outside of Tampa.
Got it. Well, that's very exciting, Adam, and we're rejoicing. I want to just share with the audience that you and your family were such a blessing to our congregation here, and we really missed you when you were gone. But it was a great opportunity for you to be with us and to be a good example to other guys in our church, and when you were active duty and all that stuff. So we really appreciate you guys, and it's really a joy for us to see you thriving down there. So before we talk a little bit more about all of the miracles, I'm curious to hear some more about your background. Now, I have heard your testimony many times, but I've only heard the 3 to 5 minute version. That's hurry up, you're on the clock. Yeah. So what I would love to hear is a little bit more about your family background and how you grew up, how and where. I know you're from Pennsylvania, but why don't you share a little bit about your family life and what you were like as a kid?
All right. So my earliest memories, so my father and mother, they got divorced when I was very young. I think I was less than 5. I was probably like 3 or 4 maybe. I remember before, like around the time they did or before they did, they used to have these big parties at the house. I smell, weed smoke, and they made this like homemade, like, I don't know, wine or something. I don't know what it was, but my parents were both hippies. And so they're from that hippie generation. And, they ended up having the divorce. So then, I went with my mother, and, but we weren't too far from where my dad lived, probably like 45 minutes or so. And so we would see him all the time. But with my mom, things were very unstable. So probably from age 5 to age 12. 12 is when I actually moved with my father at age 12. But during those years, I probably changed schools about 8 times.
Wow.
So yeah, it was a lot of like moving around and kind of her being like single mom instability. Me and my brother were there. So we really wanted to move with my dad. Well, see, my mom, she got saved when I was probably about 8 or 10, maybe. And so she got radically saved, like legitimately saved. She went to this church called, I think it was called World Christian Outreach or something like that, over there in Connellsville, Uniontown, Pennsylvania area, like right outside of Pittsburgh. And she had us, but me and my brother, we always wanted to move with my dad because he was stable and he had a house and he had a pool in the yard and and he had a big yard, and we had some childhood friends over there. So we always wanted to go over there. Well, lo and behold, we got what we wanted. But it was not good. We got over there. My dad is not saved. He's still not saved. He never gave his life to Christ. And so he didn't discipline us. We did whatever we wanted. Early on, I got into drinking alcohol, and in my early teenage years, getting drunk and stuff like that. Age 14, I drank a half bottle of Wild Turkey and almost died, And so it was just a matter of, thank God I didn't choke on my own vomit and die. It was pretty bad.
Wow.
But, and then I remember that. And I think my dad called my mom because she literally came over the next day, and she hardly ever came over.
Did you have to go to the hospital for that?
I didn't. I didn't, but I was extremely sick, and I knew I had a lot high, alcohol. Now I look back, I knew I had alcohol poisoning. And I remember how gross my thoughts were towards alcohol right then and there. And I was like, this stuff is nasty. I'll never have it again. I felt so bad. But after it wore off in a couple weeks or maybe a couple months, all of a sudden I started desiring it. Started having a taste for it. So I initially hated it, never again. This is, but then all of a sudden it created something in me, and I became a really heavy drinker. I was always drinking to the point of that, passing out, throwing up, just all kinds of stuff. And, through high school and college, which didn't last long because of that. But in high school, I was well liked in the school. I was a basketball player, from from 6th grade. Ever since I moved in with my dad, I played basketball, junior high, high school, I was all conference.
Did he encourage that?
He did. He liked basketball a lot. Yeah. He did.
So, I'm not sure if you're aware, but drinking alcohol is illegal for people under 21. So I'm just curious, how did you get your hands on it all the time?
Well, we were from outside of the city. My dad lived pretty much in a rural area. So people out there, they really didn't care. People would
Really?
get it for you. Older kids would get it for you. It was just like, we always seem to find a way.
So your dad doesn't seem like he didn't really stop you from messing around with all that.
No, he didn't. Pretty much our family was all kind of pro alcohol, you know. I mean, the family reunions were filled with just a bunch of binge drinking, and I mean, he drank all the time. So, yeah, it was, I guess it would have been hypocritical. I mean, obviously it was illegal, so he probably should have said no and did something about it and put a harder foot down. But I don't know, at the time, he just couldn't get me to stop. I was definitely just driving that train out of control.
How much older are you than your brother? I'm assuming you're the older brother.
No, he's the older brother.
He's the older,
Yeah.
so you're the baby of the family. Any other brothers and sisters?
So he's 18 months older than me. My father remarried, and the lady had a daughter that was 2 months younger than me, so about the same age. So my stepmother Cordy and my stepsister Carissa, and then my dad and her had a baby who my youngest sister that's 8 years younger than me, Rebecca. So yeah, we all grew up together. Okay. You know, well, like I said, I was in high school, and I was just I was that good example that everybody liked. I got good grades. I did good in sports. I got along with everybody. I didn't get caught at most of the stuff. You know, nobody knew about all the stuff I was doing. And so I was kind of like a closet alcoholic, you know, and then I got into weed really bad too in high school. Like,
wow.
It was like a regular thing for a few years. Yeah.
So, you said it was kind of a closet thing. So this was not really a party activity. You were doing this on your own, or just with?
Well, no. I was doing it, but I think like the older people weren't finding out. Like I would do it with all my friends, but like I think, you know, other people just were like, "Oh, this kid's like a good kid. He's like he's not a bad kid doing bad things." And I was definitely a bad kid doing bad things. I don't think that's funny now.
Wow.
I laugh because it's just, what else can you do at this point?
Yeah. What do you look at that as you know, having some years of experience now? Do you see that was maybe a family curse?
Oh yeah, definitely. I don't know how it came about. Probably maybe the hippie generation, my dad and mother. My grandparents, one grandparents were in Ligonier, PA, and they were, I guess they were Christian, but then the other ones in Latrobe were Presbyterian, which is kind of like a religious Christian group, you know. So, So then both of them stayed married all the way till they died, you know. But then my parents, they got divorced, and that's, you know, that whole generation kind of started that rebellious movement.
So, yeah, totally. But when your dad was maybe not, you know, putting as much control on you as you probably needed. But where was your mom in all of this? You still had contact with her?
Yeah, I still had contact with her, and she was praying for me. And, you know, she was, you know, going to another church, like, you know, she was like 45 minutes away. And, you know, she was there. I didn't see her as much. Like, she didn't have, you know, much money, so she couldn't really come around. Like when it was the other way and I was with her, my dad was picking me up regularly. But then whenever I was with my dad, she wasn't coming around that often, you know. But she was always very thoughtful. Yeah. She was very loving. She still is.
Yeah. And what about your brother? Was he caught up in this stuff also?
Yes. Yeah, he and I, we did a lot together. We were pretty close. And we still are pretty close, actually.
Yeah.
He got saved before I did.
Really? I did not know
So he
that.
got saved, I think it was around 2001, and I got saved in around 2007. So he would come around and he wouldn't really, he by his example, he wouldn't do the same things that I was still doing. So I think he would witness to me a little bit, but I was just totally it would just go over my head probably. I wasn't open to it at all.
Do you ever remember having any spiritual influence on you, like maybe from your mom, like when she got saved? Do you ever remember hearing the gospel or understanding anything about Jesus?
Yeah. In fact, whenever I was living after she got saved and until I moved with my dad for a couple years, I was going with her to that church, and a lot of times I would just kind of I remember sleeping under the pew. She would go to, the morning service and the evening service, and probably a midweek evening service too, I think. And, but I remember learning about, some Bible stories, David and Goliath, Noah's Ark, the kind of standard ones. I learned all those. And I actually remember one time we were at a church service, and I must have been 10 or 12, like I said, somewhere around there, probably 10 about this time. Because this was the first, when we moved to this area called Uniontown, this guy had a church, and half of the church was a room that was the assembly room. And then the other half was his home that he lived in, and it had a downstairs. And so I guess the half that was the assembly, I don't know if it was the addition or what, but it had pews in it. It was, from what I remember, it was just a nice little church there. And she looked at me one time during a service and said, "You're going to be a preacher one day." And so I kind of feel like that was the Holy Spirit.
Your mom said that?
Said that. And I kind of feel like that was the Holy Spirit speaking through her, because she's told me millions of things, and I've forgotten 90. There's so many that I forgot. But then you remember crystal clear something that was told to you when you were, 10 years old in this little church, and it's always stuck heavy. It's so yeah.
Wow.
So that was something that I took away from that.
So, okay, so fast forwarding then to the time of your life as a teenager, you're kind of going astray and letting the alcohol control you, basically. Did you ever get in real trouble, or think that it was going to be worse than it got?
Yeah. I was very, very bad. I was stealing a lot of things that weren't mine. I was driving a lot. I mean, all my friends, I've got friends that have got 3 DUIs, 2 DUIs, they get ankle bracelets, all this stuff. And here I am, I never got caught, but I probably drove while under the influence hundreds of times. It was, all the time. So, drugs, if you get some drugs, you keep some, you sell some, you know what I mean? It's not like I was some major drug dealer, but you tend to, that's how it works. You get a big pile, and then somebody wants some, you can't give it to them for free, whatever. But different drugs, narcotics, cocaine, acid, a lot of heavy, I ended up getting in a lot of heavy drugs, and so those are things that, that's definitely a risk with the law.
Yeah. Pastor Campbell says I was an entrepreneur. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's man, it's a hard life to live, isn't it? Because you can't really, keep down a regular job, and it ends up consuming you. So, where did that lead to next? You said that this was through high school, and then you had made a run at college that didn't work out so well. So, what happened there?
So, I always had wanted to be an engineer. And so I went to Penn State, and first semester doing pretty well, A's and B's. And then I just got into the party scene, and, I was always looking for someone to party with. And I started just cutting classes, like almost never going. And so obviously my next report card was like all D's, and I failed quite a few classes actually. And I was like, it was like a night and day, pretty crazy, pretty wild. And then I took some summer classes, and I did okay because most other people were gone. It was just me. But then I realized I was like, my dad was putting up half of the money for the tuition. And I was like, I'm wasting his money, and I was starting to feel pretty bad about it. So I was like, I can't take another semester and put his money at risk again. So I dropped out, went home, back to live with him. And believe it or not, I saw a commercial about the Navy on TV.
Oh, the commercial worked, huh?
The commercial advertisement, and I should remember. They've been through so many different slogans from then, but I can't remember if it was like full speed ahead, or I can't remember. But so I called the Navy recruiter, I remember, and interestingly, when I failed, I guess it's when I dropped out of college that I think that's about whenever I stopped smoking weed too, because I don't know, maybe that was the bottom point I needed to be like, you don't need, this stuff is messing you up. But for some reason, at the point in which I contacted the recruiter, I had been 6 months sober. I hadn't touched the stuff, because you can't go in the military unless you pass a drug test. So, so I quickly got signed up, and I was in delayed entry. Of course, I did get in trouble while I was in delayed entry. I got a disorderly conduct and underage drinking, which had to be adjudicated at the magistrate. So I almost lost my program and everything. And I was like, oh my goodness.
Wow.
But then somehow by a miracle, and I don't know if this was just God, causing me to get to this path, or getting me out of town where I needed to go. So, but then, I went to the Navy. I was 20 years old at the time. Went to boot camp.
Mm. Wow. So, that sounds like, you give a young man a purpose and something to live for. That's usually a pretty good thing for him.
Yeah, and I started doing electronics, and that's what I was studying in college. So in the Navy offered electronics program, and I was like, okay, this is and actually the commercial talked about electronics, and it talked about money for college. And I was like, okay, those are the two things I think that I was needing at the time.
You were sold. So did you get out of the Navy everything that the commercial told you would?
Well, I got a lot more than that. It was quite a ride. I did 20 years in the Navy, a lot of sacrifice. When I came to you, it was because I was moving around for the Navy. When I did 20 years. I did get, after I retired, I got 2 bachelor's degrees, which were completely paid for by the Navy. So
Not bad.
I got that, and I got my current job now. I'm using my experience I had in the Navy and the technical side, and working on some, engineering type stuff.
So sounds like it worked out all right. So, but what I know about the Navy is that it doesn't solve all of your personal problems.
Yeah.
Well, what was it like for you when you went into boot camp, and what kind of changes did you see in yourself?
So when I went into boot camp, I was so used to sleeping till 2 p.m. every day, because I would just stay up, whatever, and then I sleep till 2 a.m. Now all of a sudden I got to get up at 6 o'clock every day, and it hurt. The first couple weeks was just brutal. And I went to Great Lakes during the winter, January of 1998. And there was an ice storm. Everything was glazed over, and it was just. And I got sick. I even got sick. I had to stay in my bunk for a few days. I had a sore throat and different things. But overall, I I think it really helped me, because if there's one thing I didn't get a lot of at home, it was discipline. And I was lacking in getting that. And so it kind of threw that in there. I was always active. I was always like, if there's something to do, I do it, and stuff like that. I wasn't lazy really, but I'd just stay up late and sleep in late. And that changed a lot when that happened.
Yeah. Did it put a stop to your partying lifestyle?
Pretty much. I mean, I still was drinking quite a bit, and that actually, so the alcoholism that continued on actually all the way till I got saved. So I joined the Navy when I was 20. I got saved when I was 29, and I was an alcoholic all the way up till I got saved.
It's amazing that that you could maintain that and still have a career in the Navy. But I guess there's something to the drunken sailor thing.
Yeah, there's some sympathy. People, and if you work hard, they'll cover for you. There was one time where the cardinal sin is missing an underway. That's when the ship goes out and you're not on it, but you're supposed to be. That's the cardinal sin. And it happened to me one time. And I was drinking and I was hungover and I didn't wake up, and I went down and the ship was out. And I was like, oh man, I missed it. And it was only out for the day, thank goodness. It wasn't a major deployment or anything, but they gave me a slap on the wrist. I was on a small ship. My first ship had 30 men. It was all male crew, small ship, 30 men. And we all wore a lot of different hats, had a lot of responsibilities. And, I was just one of those hard workers. I would work all day until the working's done, and then I would go get beer or alcohol and drink. And it was just that's what happened over and over and over. And, but they forgave me for missing that. Most people, if you miss that, you get a reduction in pay grade.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I guess if you're the one that is in the place that nobody else wants to be, you're doing more work than anybody else. They need you. Yeah.
If they would have, I don't know what would have happened if they would have smacked me down. But my Navy career went really good. I that ship, and then I went and did some recruiting tour. I did 2 recruiting tours. I did one right after that ship. I went to Pittsburgh and recruited. Then I went to another ship, and I made chief. I became a chief in the Navy at 9 years in, which is really fast. I was a junior guy with a higher rank, and it took me a while to learn and really feel comfortable in those shoes, like years. But it helped. Mm-hmm. It was the same year that I got saved. I made chief. And so I got saved in April of 2007. The ship was going to this overseas mini deployment called Neptune Warrior, where they go up to like Ireland and England and all these places, and everybody wants to go there, right? I wanted to go there. Like, I'm Irish. I'm like, yes, this is going to be great. And they said, McFeaters, we're selecting you to go to this school, and you're going to miss Neptune Warrior because the school is during Neptune Warrior. And I was like, no, how can they do this to me? So that was probably right before I got saved, by the way, was that mind thinking. And so I stayed back for this school. Well, I was able to put together an administrative package while I was in the school to mail in to the chief selection board. And it greatly increased my chances. And I probably got selected because I set such a really good package because I was in the school. So I see that as a little bit of like the fingerprint of God, And then, and then I did get selected to be a chief, and we deployed. So I got saved in Norfolk, Virginia, right? And the church, Pastor Morales was there, and I got saved April 2007. I got baptized in August. I got filled with the Holy Spirit in September during a Pastor Roman Gutierrez Twice Dead revival. So it was like, wow. And then I deployed that September 15th, like a week or two later.
Ooh. whirlwind.
Yeah. So, but the thing is, when I got deployed, it was like almost like I now had no distractions, and my heart was on God. And so I had a Bible, I had some good Christian books, a couple John Bevere books, Undercover, and these books. My brother actually gave me those, and then I had some CDs, some sermon CDs, and I still remember them. Pastor Campo from Cape Cod, Pastor Labato from Bullhead. I had these ones, and they were like the one. Like I could just I probably listened to them, 20 times each at least.
Right.
And I was just feeding off of all that. So then they say, you're an electronics technician, chief. We got another one on the ship already. One of you has to go. He's senior. We're going to ask him what he wants to do. So they asked the guy, and he said he wants to stay. So I had to go. And I remember I was supposed to go to another ship, but I talked to the master chief, and he said, he said, I'll make the call for you, because during my recruiting tour, they would give me a sea duty credit of 18 months if I went and did another recruiting tour. So I said, I'll do a recruiting tour. And he said, I'll make a call for you. And he didn't have to do it. He could have just sent me to another ship, because they always just like, get to the next ship. It's the Navy. Next ship.
Yeah.
Stay underway. Right. They want people at sea. But he's like, he made the call for me. And I almost feel like that was the fingerprint of God too, because he's like, just remember this. He's like, if you ever have to make a call for somebody someday, And so I was like, wow. So he did a big thing there. And then that's when I got transferred up to Woodbridge, which is my mother church. Pastor Colonna was there. It was a baby church, like a handful of people. And not too many were like consistent at the time either. It was just something I was able to walk into and be part of prayer, be part of it's where I first went to prayer before service outreaches. I never did any of that in Norfolk because I was just getting saved and I wasn't really converted and doing those extra things. So that's where my discipleship really began. The testimony of getting saved in Norfolk, getting set free from alcohol, gambling, pornography, cigarettes, profanity. When I got filled with the Holy Spirit, I was a cussing sailor, and all of a sudden I was able to control it and I stopped cussing. And so, That's a big one. People don't realize it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, if you don't mind, I just want to go back for a second to the time frame, like before you actually got saved, and what were the circumstances that led up to that? No doubt your mom is praying for you. Your brother, who had been saved also, was praying for you. But what was happening in you spiritually, and what led you to that moment of surrendering your life to Christ?
Well, Pastor Morales and probably some other people have said it, I'm sure, many a times, is, sin is only fun for a season. It's going to, take you further than you wanted to go, keep you longer than you want to stay, cost you more than you want to pay. Right. And so debt was out of control, ruined relationships, just over alcohol and just being a drunk. And I remember one night you're not supposed to do this in the Navy, obviously, but I snorted a couple 8 balls of cocaine with another guy. And then I went back. I was in that school actually. And I went back I was staying in a dorm room over by the school in Dam Neck, right over by you guys. And I went and I remember I was in the room by myself, and I put the blanket over my head, like I was hiding from somebody, like from God, right? And I really felt like I was like trying to cover myself, like really weird. And I was like, something has to give. And so I remember going to a small Baptist church around the neighborhood, and I went in, and they were in there, they preached or whatever, and then they asked, anybody they did some kind of an altar call. I can't remember what they said. Does anybody here need to have a prayer with Jesus or something? And so I did, and I went to the front, and
So you were feeling some conviction for your sins.
I was.
Yeah.
And so I went to the front, and they asked me, have you been to church before? And I told them about the time that those couple years with my mom. So they shooed me into like a back room with one of their lead guys or whatever. And he's asking me questions. Oh, you've been to that? This is okay. He's like, okay, you're good. And I'm sitting there thinking like, no, I'm not good. I'm not good. They did not pray with me. They did not. They did not lead me in a sinner's prayer, nothing. They thought because of I was in a church when I was 10 to 12 years old. I think I might have even got baptized in a river or something, that I was good after, but like the 15 to 20 years of sin in between then was like weighing on me heavy. And so then that school that I was at, Lily Hagen, who's in Norfolk, invited me out to me and another guy. She was our teacher. She was our instructor, invited us out to church, and I'm the one that went. So that was how I got there.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing. So when you showed up in the Norfolk church, what was going on there?
Oh, well, I didn't know it then, but I know it now. They were having flaming revival. They were having like earth-shaking revival. They had all these disciples in there, and like people were getting saved, like lots of people all the time, and it was where I needed to be when I answered the altar call.
And you said this is 2005?
2007.
7, okay.
Yeah.
So this must have been really not long after Pastor Morales got in there, because it sounds about around the same time, I think.
Yes, I believe so. I believe he must have got there around 05, 06, and I know he had sent Pastor Colonna to Northern Virginia around 06, and then
Okay, so you came in after he was already gone.
Yes, and so
already launched out.
Interestingly, whenever they would pray before service, they'd have the, hey, we're praying for so-and-so in Alexandria, Virginia. I never met him before. But when I was deployed, there was a couple options of places I could go, and Alexandria, Virginia was one of the places. And I was like, there's a church there. And so I picked Alexandria, Virginia, knowing there was a church there. So when I showed up at my job, I was a recruiting station on Franconia Road. I could probably, with a good golf swing, hit where his building was from where I was working.
Wow, that's awesome. Divine appointments, right? Well, Adam, I want to ask you to describe the radical change. You rattled off a few of the things that God set you free from: the pornography and alcohol and cussing, and I mean, just describe that, what that was like for you as a 27-year-old guy to have such a radically different kind of lifestyle in a very short amount of time.
So I was 29 when I got saved.
Oh, sorry, 29.
And so interestingly, I remember when I was a teenager, I used to tell people that I probably wouldn't live to the age of 30. And I got saved at 29 and a half. And so I don't know. I don't know what would have happened.
Yeah. Somehow that means something to you, obviously.
It does. It's very powerful thought, thinking maybe it's a good thing I got saved. Maybe something bad might have happened if I didn't. I don't know. But so anyways, I get saved, the next that was April.
So they did pray with you in the Norfolk church?
Yeah, they prayed with me. I think I answered the altar call like 4 times. I really did. And I was bawling every time. I was like a baby. I was like that. Who's this grown guy? You know, hey chief, get up. You know,
Oh
but
man,
like it was, you know, I was just, my heart was just so I don't know, I was just completely set free. I was so grateful. I felt that I really literally felt all my sins taken away. It was such a burden lifted off of me, and that's probably why, you know, I was breaking down like that. And then, so that was 07. So in 08, I go back to the family reunion. So the 07 family reunion in Memorial Day, which they did every year, I was drinking, but on Saturday night, it was a super late at night. I was walking in the middle of the field. I had a Corona. Took this last drink of the Corona. It was empty. I looked at the Corona. I looked up at the sky, and like the moon and the stars were out there, and God was like, "You don't need those anymore." And I literally remember I threw that bottle of Corona down, and I have not had a single drink of alcohol since then. Wow. Yeah. And so the next year, though, at the family reunion, the big buzz was everyone's got to get at them drinking, you know? So I show up and I'm drinking, you know, Coca-Colas. They notice I'm just drinking sodas. Everyone's noticing. They're all freaking out. Like, what's going on here?
It's family challenge.
So they waited until the evening. So it got late. It started getting dark. There was a campfire, and a bunch of my brother, all my cousins, they're all sitting around it, girlfriends and wives and different things. And so they come up with these peach schnapps. If you know peach schnapps, it's kind of your good tasting. It's like having a piece of candy or something, right? So they thought they'd wait till it got dark and they'd try to get me with the peach schnapps up by the fire, try to put a bunch of peer pressure on me. So I'm up there.
Like family does, right?
It was almost like you know, when the record stops, they're like, "Hey, I got the peach schnapps. Hey, Adam, how about a peach schnapps?" And everyone's starting to say, "Yeah, how about a peach schnapps?" You know, it literally was like this. It was like all this pressure was coming. And I said, you know what? I said, you know what? I gave my life to Jesus last year, and you know, I don't drink anymore. And everyone just froze, like probably jaws open and all this different stuff. And I remember my one cousin's girlfriend, this was the first time we ever seen her. He brought her to this one from New York, you know. She speaks up and says, "That's cool. I can respect that." And I won. I had victory. I had dominion. Wow. It was over.
Just one witness.
Just one person to just say that, and it was over.
That's like the preacher in church. All I need is one amen.
Yeah, so I will remember that forever, because it was like God made a way out, you know. They were really trying to get me back down. Like, how dare you get up out of this crab bucket, you know?
Right.
And so some of those relatives and cousins have gotten saved between then and now, and you know, some are still working on that. But I really think that was like earth shaking. Interestingly, a few more family reunions after that, my grandmother got saved. I did a Bible study at the family reunion, and my brother was supporting me, and I was thinking, this is going to be great. Everyone's going to come. They're all going to get saved. And I go around, and all the cousins are drinking. Nah, no thank you, no thank you. You know, they're like, my one cousin was like, the Bible. He's like, aren't there like a lot of cool war stories in there? I was like, yeah, I guess kind of. And so anyway, I was about to go do the Bible study with just me, my brother, and his wife. And then all of a sudden, my one cousin says, "Granny wants to come." And so she came, and I did a Bible study called "In God's Image." And I remember, you know, I was like, "Well, hey, what do you think God's going to look like?" And she's like, "I think I'm the closest one probably to meeting him." You know, she's old, right? And she's like, and she's saying this stuff. And anyway, at the end, she said a sinner's prayer, and I believe she went off to be with Jesus, you know. It was a couple years later she passed. And before that, she was kind of a Presbyterian, quasi drinking, smoking, not really living for God.
Right.
So was the heart really right? You know what I mean? But then she said that
Right.
prayer, and I think she meant it, and I think everything changed after that.
Oh, man. How old was she? Do you remember?
So at that time, she passed in 2014. That would have been 2012 or 2013. So maybe like 82, maybe 80. Yeah. I wish I knew better. I should know.
Yeah.
But,
yeah.
And then you know what? That also was the last family reunion.
Is that right?
The last one. They stopped doing them. They were doing them for decades. And
wow.
It wasn't my fault. I didn't tell them to stop doing it, but it stopped. For some reason, it stopped.
Yeah.
It was just
maybe you should start them back up.
Yeah, I know.
I'm sure they wouldn't mind coming to Florida. So you are then you kind of take off like a rocket ship. But what I know is true is that every new convert has challenges and difficulties that they're going to go through in spiritual battles. Maybe you could describe for our listeners some of the things that you had to really overcome.
Well, like I mentioned, I was in heavy debt whenever I got saved, and financial wreck, over 30 grand in debt, almost all of it like revolving credit cards and stuff like that. Couldn't pay my bills. So I had to learn how to be responsible with money. Yeah. And so
not a small thing.
Yeah, it was not a small thing, but with the wisdom of God, I started giving. Initially I was just giving offerings. Then I started giving tithe, and God started moving mountains. I started seeing a lot of miracles with money. I remember just when I had that debt all paid off. It was about 4 years after I got saved. My debt was down to zero, and I was like, yes, But wow. I was reading books. I was following, the Dave Ramsey, right? Financial Peace University. I started keeping a budget, started just practical wisdom stuff, but also just always giving. I was giving to God, faithfully. Yeah. And He's just helping me. And it wasn't long after that I was able to actually buy a home. It was in 2010. I bought a home. I forget, my credit score was finally like up in the high sixes or something. I mean, it was like in the mid fives when I was getting saved, and everything was crashing and burning. But it came up. I bought a home, and it was just like the blessing of God, right? In the church, there was three of us men who all bought a home about the same time, and we were all like in the same level of our walk of faith. And that's Pastor Kevin Ashley, who's in Laurel, Maryland, and Joseph Schoonover, who was in Manassas, and now he's really doing a lot of help, almost like assisting in Woodbridge. We all like had the same thing going on. We were rock bottom financially, and then we started putting God first, and we all started tithing, giving, and we all bought homes. So it was like a really good news story to bounce back financially and get the credit score up. You know how it is these days.
Yeah. And what's interesting about that is that you were probably making pretty good money the whole time. Your income, it's as a chief in the Navy, I'm sure wasn't too shabby, hopefully, but it's just the mindset had to change, right? Absolutely.
And even just being an alcoholic and a cigarette smoker, I mean, that'll gobble up like $500 to $1,000 a month or something.
I can't believe how much, man. You buy I don't buy. I go to Wawa, and I see people buying a pack of cigarettes for $7. I'm like, oh my gosh,
bad.
You're paying a high price for sin.
Golly.
To destroy yourself.
Straight stupidity. If I had all that money back,
right?
But I pray. I would pray, God, restore, because God's able to restore even that which the enemy has stolen away before, and then you get it back. And I remember I came back from I was doing some counseling at one of the teen boot camps in North Carolina, and I opened my mailbox. It's like a Saturday morning. We finished the boot camp Friday night. I was weary. I drove all the way home. I was super tired. I look in my mailbox, and there's a check in there for over $6,000. And I'm like shaking it, like, is this a rubber check? What is this thing? Is this real? And I didn't think it was real at all. And I went to bed, and I was like, that must have been a dream. And so, but anyway, I got in a lot of trouble with MBNA, which is a credit card company back in the day. I believe they got sold into either Capital One or Bank of America. But I got in a lot of trouble with that because they had me in a snag. So my credit limit, I would reach the credit limit. I would go over it. They'd hit me with like a fine for an overage fee and a fine for a late fee. And they just kept, and then they would raise it, and I would go up to that. They'd hit me again. They just were walking the dog and just beating me to death, and so apparently what they were doing was wrong, illegal. And somebody got a hold of it and found out, and they wrote me this check back for $6,000 for illegally doing like late fees and over limit fees. That was a big day. I was like, my goodness, my God, he answers with fire.
Oh, that's great. That's fantastic. Well, yeah, that's a huge struggle. And, there's people who fill our churches and that don't get this revelation about generosity. And, it's amazing. You can almost point them out, the ones that are subsisting. That, it's like they're just always in the quicksand of having to, wait till Friday, until payday comes. But, it's such a profound revelation when you realize that, that when God is the supplier, when he is Jehovah Jireh, when he's the one and you recognize him as such, he's able to do more than we could ever do in our own just strength as budgeting and, the strategies of life. So you experienced that.
Oh, big time. I remember I went to a conference in Cape Cod in 2009, and I gave big offering, like World Evangelism Night. Boom. I dropped a big check in the plate, and then I gave the other nights of, conference you give every night. And then, then you're buying some souvenirs, some food and this and that. And I remember I was on the way back home and I started calculating everything, and I was like, oh no, those checks aren't going to clear. Oh no. So, I was still learning right then. So, but I get home and I open my mailbox and there's a check in there for $250, and it covered what my checks were all going to clear for. And that was really big too, because look at the timing. That check, what if it didn't come for 3 more weeks? The other checks bounced. Right. It came, it was there waiting for me. It was almost like God was like, I got your back, and I can put a check in your mailbox anytime I want to. And so, I guess those are a couple of check in the mailbox stories, huh?
Yeah. Hey, I'll take as many as I can get.
Yeah. So,
well, yeah. So I still have questions to ask you about how God began to call you into ministry, and there's a little lady called Christina that is part of this story also. I want to ask you about her, but we're going to say goodbye to our free subscribers real quick and take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to continue the story. So if you want to hear the rest of this, make sure you hit the subscribe button. And thanks for listening to the VBPH Sermon Podcast.